everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Elaine Sigler. I am a specialist with Provider Outreach and Education. Also on the line with me today is my good friend Karen Curtis. She's helping me out, making sure things run smoothly behind the scenes. She'll be monitoring the chat. She'll be adding some links and some other helpful resources for you to make this the best educational experience that we can. Today we're talking about the Interactive Voice Response, or IVR system. And this webinar is part of a series that we're doing to put out more education on what the IVR is, why we have it, what it can do for you. If you want to catch up on past sessions, you can find them on our YouTube channel and the Encore presentations page of our website. The reason that we chose this topic for a series of webinars is based on survey responses from our provider community. When we ask you to take a survey, we really do look at all of those responses, and we take your responses very seriously in looking for ways where we can improve not only your education, but your overall experience with WPS. I want to take a moment to invite you to visit the training center of our website. This is where you went to sign up for this webinar, but if the information was forwarded to you, you may not know where that actually stems from. And what we have on our website, that's where we post the event materials for all of our webinars. So if you want a copy of the slides for today's presentation, you can get them there. This is where we list upcoming events. This is also where you can find out about recordings. We have an Encore presentation, a whole list of recordings of our live webinars. Depending on the amount that we have out there, we keep them for 60 to 90 days or so. Our chat feature, I mentioned Karen was monitoring that for us. This is also where you can add any questions that you have related to today's topic. And then at the end of our prepared remarks, we'll take as many questions as we have time for. Whether you're listening live or you're listening to the Encore presentation, we do hope that you will take the opportunity to give us your feedback by way of that survey. Those surveys, like I said, give us insight into how we're doing, kind of our report card, and then also you have the opportunity to tell us about topics that you'd like to see in upcoming education, things that you want and need specifically. The disclaimer message that you see here, among other things, is to let you know that we do our best to provide the most up-to-date information. We want it to be accurate. We want it to be complete. But as a government program, Medicare does change sometimes. So the federal regulations, of course, will always take priority over anything that is in our slide deck or that I might say today. I'm just letting you know about that. And we are recording this session, and it will be part of our Encore presentations on our website and our YouTube channel, as I mentioned. Now, the next three slides, and I apologize that there are so many, but I didn't want to make the font so small that it was hard for you to see. So we have a list of acronyms. Medicare is full of acronyms. So these are the ones that we used when we created this presentation, or that I know that I'm for sure going to mention during my speaking time today. So, sometimes we get used to using acronyms and we forget that there are people that are new to Medicare or new to the IVR that might not be as familiar with them. And so we just want to provide this as a resource for you. So if you've downloaded the slide deck, you can go back and refresh your memory on what a particular acronym means if it's not one that you're used to. So what are we going to cover in this session? We'll start out by defining what the IVR is, what it can do. We're going to examine what information you need to have ready in order to use it. That'll make it easier for you. We'll share some tips along the way for using the IVR, things that we've found out on our own or that we've heard from providers who use the IVR on a regular basis. And then we'll end our time today, as we usually do, with some resources. Where can you go in the regulations or other Medicare places to get more information on what we're talking about? So as the name states, the IVR is a voice-activated system, but users can also use their touch-tone telephone keypad to interact with it. Way back when the IVR was first started, we called it the status line. It was, kind of state of the art at the time. I can tell you that was 27 years ago, but it was something brand new that you could use to check eligibility. You could check status. And then along the way, in addition to the touch-tone telephone options, you were able to speak to it and it could understand what you wanted. So it has evolved over the years. What kind of information does it provide? Well, as you can see here, among other things, claim status, payments, information about overpayments, information about remittance advice, and overlapping claims. And that's not everything. It's not an all-inclusive list, but that's a lot of the things that you can use the IVR for. Now, depending on whether you're a Part A provider that bills on the UB04 or the 837I electronic equivalent, or you submit Part B claims for professional services on the CMS 1500, the electronic equivalent of that is the 837P. So the items that you can access in the IVR are different. And that's because the services you provide and how you bill for them is also different. So there are some unique situations for Part A versus Part B, and we'll look at some of those differences in just a few minutes. So if you're requesting information other than a general question, the IVR does require you to authenticate your identity before you can access claim, beneficiary, or provider-specific information. You'll have to provide certain data elements before you can go any further. And remember how I said Medicare is full of acronyms? This whole slide is almost an acronym. So I wasn't kidding when I said nothing is called by its real name in Medicare. We always, almost always, use an acronym. So you'll be required to provide certain things, and this is to protect you and the integrity of the information that the IVR gives out. We hear about identity theft, we hear about data breaches, we hear about hacking, things like that. And so this is all in an attempt to protect that information. We don't want that information to be available to people who are not authorized to have it and might be doing something malicious with it. So this slide outlines the required elements as they relate to a provider. So you'll need a valid NPI, PTAN, and tax identification number combination. You are only required to say or enter the last 5 digits of your tax ID, but you do have to say or enter the entire PTAN and NPI. You should also plan to have a remittance advice handy, because in certain situations, like if you're transferred to a customer service representative, they may ask you for information from a remittance advice as one more step in validating your information. So on the flip side, we have the beneficiary elements that are going to be required. And this is only for certain inquiries. Not every inquiry is beneficiary specific. Some are provider specific. And so you'll need the beneficiary or the patient's name as it appears on their Medicare card. If it doesn't match what Social Security records have, you might get wrong information or no information at all. If you're using the keypad to enter the patient's name, you'll enter numerical equivalents, and that'll be for the first 6 letters of the last name. Some last names are short, Fox, Smith, and some are quite long. So the system, if you're entering it using your keypad, you'll only need the first 6 letters of the last name and the first initial. We need the patient's Medicare number. This is known as the MBI, Medicare Beneficiary Identifier, and that's the number that's on their red, white, and blue Medicare card. Depending on what you're looking for, the system could also require the patient's date of birth and the date of service. The date of service would be important in some of those situations where the information could be different depending on the time frame that you're inquiring about. Other items that you'll need, you're going to need a telephone with a handset or a headset. Speakerphones and cell phones might work. We don't recommend them to new users just because equipment is different. Speaker sensitivity is different, things like that. And so your best bet is a telephone with a handset or a headset. Try to be in a quiet environment. Since the system is listening, there's background noise, there's computer keying, there's other phones ringing, there's people talking, it might pick up that background noise and cause it to not work as well for you. So if possible, be in a quiet environment. Consider having the IVR operating guide open. If you need to reference that, it does give you step-by-step instructions on how to enter information and navigate the menus. Make sure that you have the correct one open, and by that I mean Part A versus Part B. Some of the prompts are different, and you'll not get the information or proceed how you expect if you're using the wrong one. I do suggest bookmarking it rather than saving that guide to your desktop or printing it out. This way, you'll always have the most up-to-date version. As an example, recently the Part A guide was updated. There were some new features added, and this is the same for that IVR conversion chart. We'll talk about those and actually show you where to find those in just a little bit. So if you've never heard of them before, there's more to come on that. The conversion tool is going to help you convert alphabetic data into numeric format for entering using your phone with your keypad. When you first dial in, the IVR gives you some preliminary messages. So by this I mean this could be announcements, this could be current issues, information about system outages, that kind of thing. So there's some of those opening messages just informational in nature. Sometimes CMS tells us and other MACs what they have to be, but after that, after those opening messages, you can also get information on how to access the survey at the end of the call if you want to give your feedback on using the IVR. Those opening messages can change, as I said, as needed, depending on the situation. And then after that, the system will give you the initial prompt saying, in a few words, please tell me why you're calling. And then at that point, for your best results, use a response that's short but make sure it provides enough detail to route your call correctly. As an example, you could say, I'm calling about a claim denial, or I want to check overlapping claims. The IVR uses what we call natural language understanding. Some IVRs with other companies, other contractors, they might use a phonetic alphabet where you would say alpha rather than A, or Bravo instead of B. Natural language allows you to just be more conversational. You're not limited to a predefined or a specific term or touch tone options. When you look at the IVR guide, though, it does give you suggestions. But instead, you can speak, I can't speak freely today, but you can speak freely to express your needs. Kind of like if you were talking to a person. The goal of natural language is to improve the customer experience, route you to the right resource more quickly, and reduce the number of prompts that you have to listen to. So then at this point, the system's going to ask you to speak or enter your NPI, PTAN, and your tax identification number. And again, that's the last 5 digits of your tax identification number. If you'll be entering them with your keypad, this is where those conversion tools or that chart that we're going to look at will come in handy. And then after you've authenticated with those items, then the system's going to proceed with prompts related to what you've asked for. So then in this session, we're focusing on checks, overpayments, and questions. So those are just 3 of the different options that you have within the IVR. This slide shows you the self-service menu options related to these topics. So as you see, the touch tone options are different for Part A and Part B. So for checks, if you're in the Part A section, you're going to use the 5, and for Part B, it's going to be 4. So this is why it's so important that you use the correct guide and know which side you're using, because there are some differences. We're going to look at each one of these things in more detail, and we're going to start with checks for Part A. So I separated it out. Part A providers can search for their last 3 checks or a specific check. When we say checks, it could be an electronic payment. The majority of our providers are paid by electronic funds transfer. It's actually a requirement, but there are some exceptions. So you're going to press 1 or say last 3 checks for a rundown of your 3 most recent payments. The other option is to press 2, or you could say specific check. If you choose this, you'll need to enter the date of the payment for the system so that it can search for and retrieve that information. So this slide then will show you the details. These are the details that you'll receive: the date the check or the EFT was issued, the check amount, the check number, and the check status. And by check status, I mean it could be paid, stopped, voided, or outstanding. After you receive the check information, then you have other options for requests that you can make. The recommended verbiage is listed here, but it's just recommended, but something in the way of something like you see listed here. It also has the keypad equivalents. You can say repeat that, additional PTAN information. If you say get another check, the system will respond if a range of dates was initially provided. You can say change the PTAN or change the NPI. And then if you want to start over, you can say main menu. Now it's your turn, Part B providers. Your process is a bit different, so let's take a look at that now. You can search by the status of the payment or a range of dates. If you choose status, then you'll have subsections, and they're shown here with their corresponding touch tone options. So if you search by status, you can look for all outstanding payments. You can look for all paid payments. If there's any stopped payments, you could get information. You can ask for the date that it was cashed. I'm not sure how often, a payment is canceled or voided, but the information is available if you need it. And then just like with Part A claims, after you receive your claim status information, you have other requests that you can make. You can say, repeat that. Sorry, it looks like my slides moved when they weren't supposed to, apparently. We'll get you here. You can see all those different choices that you have. And then just like with the Part A claims, you have repeat that, you can go to the next check, you can go to previous check, you can change the date. That, like I said, is only going to be available if the initial search was a range of dates. And then if you want to change the status, you can say that as well. You can also say additional information. This would only even be an option for you if additional PTANs are available under that specific NPI. You can say change the PTAN, change the NPI, or again, if you want to start over, you can say main menu. So now I want to move on here from this and talk about the overpayments function within the IVR. If you aren't familiar, when Medicare determines that an overpayment exists, WPS issues what we call a demand letter. It notifies the provider of the amount owed to the Medicare program. So this would be things like if a claim was paid and then there was a post-pay review and some money was going to be taken back, things such as that. So if you, as a provider, don't refund the overpayment by the date that's listed in the letter, then Medicare is going to withhold your payments until that debt is paid in full. The IVR can give you details and status about the overpayments, such as the things like you see listed here. So the overpayment number, the original amount, and the remaining balance. So if some's been paid but not all, you can check the status to see what's left. It can also give you the overpayment demand letter number and date. And this might be helpful if you need to find that original letter, if it was delivered to someone other than you, your office, or your department, that can help you track it down and work backwards as far as what was it for, what claims did it contain within it, things like that. The next function of the IVR that we're going to examine is called questions. Part A and Part B have this option, and the self-service main menu option is the same in this instance for Part A and Part B, but there are some sub-menu selections for A and B that are different. To start with, you'll say something like, I have a question, or you can simply just say questions. This slide and the next slide gives you the suggested verbal prompts. Again, these aren't required, these are just suggestions. But it also gives you the touch tone options. This one is for Part A. So you have phone numbers. This is going to give you a list of WPS departments and their corresponding phone numbers. Addresses, also going to give you a list of departments, but this time with their mailing addresses. And this is important depending on the type of correspondence that you're going to send in. You can get the hours of operation for the different departments. Some of their phone lines are open different times and with different days of the week. Users can also ask about and get detailed information about the different levels of appeal rights by saying appeals, appeal rights, or pressing number 4. Additional questions for Part A users are listed here. And I know the IVR refers to them as HMOs, and that's one term for it. But these are known as the Medicare Advantage plans that replace traditional Medicare. Some people also call them Part C, things like that. If you say HMOs, you can say or enter the 5-character contractor ID. This ID usually begins with the letter H. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but it's their contract ID. Once you do that, then the IVR is going to give you that plan name. Is it Humana? Is it some other type of plan? So it'll give you the name, the phone number, if it's available, and then also the address. So this could be helpful if your patient tells you they're in a Medicare Advantage plan, but they don't happen to have their card with them or something like that. The final item that we're going to discuss for Part A is information about remarks codes. So you can say something like remittance advice code definitions, and then you can say or enter your remittance advice code. The IVR then will give you the definition. Once you get that information, you can say repeat that, get another code, or you can start over by going to the main menu. Now, when Part B providers tell the IVR that they have questions, you can see their submenu options are different. You can say something like Medicare News to hear a list of Medicare announcements and alerts. The most current news will play first, and then you'll be able to navigate through the individual messages by saying repeat that, next message, or previous message. In addition to the Medicare News, you can say appeal rights to receive information about the 5 different levels of appeals. And then just like on the Part A side, phone numbers and addresses supplies a list of WPS departments and their corresponding phone numbers and mailing addresses. So when using the IVR, we do have some pointers for you, and we want to make sure that we share those at every opportunity just to make it more efficient and convenient for you. And first of all is that you don't have to wait for the entire prompt to play. As you become more familiar with the IVR, you'll expect what's coming next. So you can go ahead and key or speak your selection without waiting for the whole entire prompt to play. This is where the guide can really help you become more accustomed to that IVR navigation. If the IVR says you can say additional information, that usually means that there is additional information available. If the IVR is having trouble recognizing what you say, switch over and use your telephone keypad instead. Sometimes it's just you're speaking too fast. Maybe there is static or other background noise that's impeding the system understanding what you're saying. And so rather than get frustrated, switch over to using your telephone keypad instead. That can really help and speed things along. And then finally, in the very beginning, during those initial prompts, you won't hear the touch tone options. So it may not say press 1 or press 2, but know that you can do that anytime. So now what I'd like to do is go to our website and show you actually some of those tools that I mentioned and places where you can go to get more information. And so this screenshot is here in the event, knock on wood, that we can get out to the internet. But if we couldn't, I wanted to give you an idea of where you can go to get that information. Maybe you are going to be responsible for training new people on how to use the IVR. And so this can help you help them. And so that's why we've provided those things. So I'm going to go out to our website, and I have it hyperlinked here, and this is where I was knocking on wood just to make sure that it was going to work for me. Taking a little time here. Okay, and so if this is your first time out to our website every day, you might have to choose your jurisdiction, and that's fine. I'm just going to pick the first one, J5 Part A, just to keep it simple here. So then the first thing you're going to notice is over here on the right side, I'm going to try to scroll slowly so I don't make you dizzy. In our quick links, we have right over here in the quick links, the IVR conversion tool. So that is a quick way where you can jump right to that tool and be on that page. But I also want to show you, there's only so much real estate here in our quick links. So if something were to take priority over that IVR conversion tool, or there was something new added and that link was no longer available, I want you to be able to find it. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go up to Tools, the Topic Center, and I'm going to go to Self-Service. Again, this is the first time I've been on the website today, so here's the AMA license. Accept that, and it'll go away. So then on the Topic Center under Self-Service, you're in the Guides and Resources. So you'll notice that right here on the top, these are very common things that people look for on our website, and so they're right here, front and center. We have an article about natural language and how that works with our IVR. So if you take a look at that, you can get some of the recommendations on how to use that and have it work the very best for you. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that's there. A little bit about what natural language is and how that works. I'm going to back up one screen here, back to the Topic Center, and then the IVR operating guide right here. Again, Part A and Part B, is slightly different. You can see how it's broken into the different chapters or topics. You can jump right to them. You also have the capability of downloading the whole thing right here, whatever works best for you. Now, specifically, I want to show you in the entering data section, this is where we have our conversion tools. We have the beneficiary name converter, and then we also have the PTAN and the MBI converter. Now, some PTANs, depending on the type of provider that you are, do have letters within your PTAN. So this is a way that you could get the numerical equivalents for adding that into the IVR with your telephone keypad. Now, the beneficiary name converter, again, my name could be Hutchinson or something even longer than that. Remember, you're only required, like it says here, to add the first 6 letters only. My last name is exactly 6 letters. So if I just use myself as an example, if this was your beneficiary, let's say, these would be the numbers that you would need to key in with your keypad into the IVR to get started on getting information about me if I was your patient. So I just wanted to show you how that works. Now, if I scroll down a little bit more, I mentioned the conversion chart. And so if you're going to be using the same NPI, the same PTAN over and over again, you're going to have this memorized in no time. So this gives you the numerical equivalents of the letters for certain ones. So you can see how that would be entered into the IVR using your telephone keypad. So I wanted to make sure that you were aware of how to find that. Okay. So let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation here. Again, this screenshot was just in case you had trouble, or I had trouble, excuse me, getting out to the website to show you where we were going to go. Now, this slide is a list of some of the items that I just showed you. If you downloaded a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, you'll have these links that you can jump to. So this is just that article that we looked at dealing with natural language, the conversion tool, which is actually in the operating guide in that entering data area, and then links to both the Part A and the Part B guide. Now, this first one is on the CMS website. And this right here in the Beneficiary and Provider Communications Manual gives you the regulations where CMS says that, number one, self-service technology is required. And then this particular section, section 50.1, let's just jump to that real quick, if we can, where it specifically talks about the interactive voice response, because every Mac is required to have one. And then also in that requirement, where it says that if the information you are requesting can be obtained from self-service technology, that you are required to use that self-service, and that CSRs, have to refer callers to that IVR. So it's not a WPS rule, it is a CMS rule, and all Macs shall require providers to use the IVR to access claim status, et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually in the regulations, and that's why when we put our presentations together, we always have resources for you where you can read more about that, where you can see it in black and white. Where does it say I have to do that? Where does it say I cannot do this? Things like that. So we wanted to provide those for you. Now, next is an announcement that I want to share with you because this is relatively new. And this is due to change request 13754. This slide did not get into your presentation before it was put together and put on our website. That's how new this information is. So if you're listening live and you downloaded that presentation, this slide is not in that presentation. Karen did put a link to the change request in the chat. Again, you can read more about it, see it right from the horse's mouth. Right now in the IVR, you can still obtain beneficiary eligibility, but CMS has told Macs that we have to disable that eligibility information from our IVR systems. They did give a deadline of March 31st, 2025, but then the different Macs were able to make a plan on when that could happen on their side. WPS we'll remove that function by January 1st, 2025. So we're announcing this to you so that you're not blindsided, so that you know that you have other options, but in the interim, you can still get that eligibility information from the IVR, but know that that will be going away. Why? Why is CMS doing that? Well, it is part of CMS's plan and commitment to protecting beneficiaries from fraud. Realizing that if a person with less than noble intentions has the correct information, they can get beneficiary information from the IVR. So this is part of combating that fraud, preventing it from happening. The CR goes on to state, and if you want to read it, you can, that this is a pilot. It does include most MACs, and then CMS is going to be reevaluating that decision and looking at to see if this change is going to be permanent or if that eligibility information will be reinstated at some later time. This slide also lists the other self-service options that you have to check eligibility. There is the SecureNet Access Portal, or SNAP, which was just redesigned. That is the tongue-tied, secure side of the WPS website. That redesign gives you better functionality, more efficiency, less clicks. So we do have some planned educational events coming up. If you're interested in learning more about that, that is a super option for you, completely free. Part A providers can check eligibility in the Direct Data Entry, or DDE system, which is part of the Fiscal Intermediary Standard System. We also have some educational series coming up about this option. Again, that's for Part A providers. And then finally, the HIPAA Eligibility Transaction System, or HETS. HETS can also provide the beneficiary information that you're looking for and that you need. If you already have a vendor, this might already be built in for you. You may not have realized that's what it was called, but wanted to let you know that even though the eligibility is going to be removed from the IVR, it's not that we're leaving you high and dry without access to that information. There is other ways to get that information. So check out that change request if you want to. It gives a date of March 31st. WPS has made the decision to remove that information by January 1st. I'm going to pause here. I want to check in with Karen. I know she's been adding things to the chat for you. And since I'm presenting and showing my screen, I can't see that chat. So I want to check in and see if you've had any questions come in. Karen?
Thank you for all that great information, Lee. At this time, we have not had any questions come through in the chat.
Please take a few minutes to complete a survey about this course. Tell us how likely are you to attend other courses that we provide? Would you recommend our education to others? We want to know how we did, what you liked, what we could do better. And then you also have the opportunity to give us suggestions for future education. I did mention that you have a few options, so a couple different ways that you can do that depending on your preference. You can use the link that's in the chat, or when you exit the webinar, you'll be asked to go to an external site. And that external site is the CMS Qualtrics page for the survey. And that message will look something like this white box that I have over on the right. You'll see that it has this yellow or orangish triangle. You'll have the blue continue button. So if you hit continue, it will take you directly to the survey. It's nothing bad. It's not spam. Nothing bad's going to happen. If you're listening to the encore, a box will appear that looks kind of like this up here with the finger and the stars and things like that. And that will be a link for you within the encore presentation. If you're looking at the encore presentation on our website, you're using the player that's embedded there, look in your lower right-hand corner. It says that you can give us feedback there. That's also a link to the survey. So not just our live events, but our recorded materials also, you can submit a survey. Tell us how we're doing. Those surveys give us the insight into not only how we're doing, but again, the types of education that you want and you need. On behalf of myself and Karen and all of us in Provider Outreach and Education, I want to thank you so much for your participation today. I know your time is valuable, and I thank you for choosing to spend part of your day with us today. We hope you can join us for future education. We look forward to your survey feedback. You may now disconnect.